This is an episode for all of the creatives, anyone who has an idea or a passion project or just the sparks of interest in creative expression within themselves, and they don't quite know how to translate that into a regular, consistent expression of creativity that brings fulfillment and satisfaction. I've definitely been there. I've spent many years in patterns of creative frustration, and I'm now in a very different phase with that where I am regularly I'm regularly writing in ways that are deeply satisfying to me. So I have some tips to offer, some ideas, some beacons of hope, some structural ideas that I hope will help you find your method for getting your ideas out into form. It will really change your life. It will make you so happy, especially especially now. So, without further ado, let's look at ways you can find a methodology to consistently create and build satisfaction into your life. So, the first place to start is with the identity piece. Do you even think of yourself as an artist? Are you willing to take your ambitions seriously? That may seem like the least important thing. Maybe you just want to get going, you want to know what notebook to buy or software to download or desk setup or whatever the thing is, and tools are important, and we'll get to them. But the first and absolutely most important piece is to take yourself seriously as an artist. I think most of us at one point or another had wild creative ambitions in childhood, and lovingly, hopefully lovingly, people in our lives may have tried to steer us in a different direction. And, the life of an artist can be very challenging. And often those suggestions are made from a place of love and protection. And I actually think it can almost be more valuable sometimes to be making art in a place of, like on the margins of something else, because life is rich and textured, and the audiences that we aspire to connect with are rich and textured people who do other things other than make art. So if you're a veterinarian or a teacher or a software engineer or in sales, or whatever you're up to, that isn't a bar to you also being an artist. And in fact, it can really complement your art and enhance your art. But you do have to think of yourself as an artist as much as you think of yourself as, any of the other things that you are: mother, parent, child, sibling, and employee. How do you make that mental shift? I think many of us need to see the proof before we can make the jump. So if you don't have notebooks full of writing, if you don't have a studio space full of canvases that you've created, it might feel hard to say with confidence, no, I am an artist, or, my medium is writing. So, no, I am a writer. But you don't have to have all of that proof. In fact, that will come more easily once you have really made the identity shift and inhabited this creative identity that you aspire to. It's a shift from aspiration to just acceptance that that's intrinsically who you are, because we all are intrinsically creative. And I thought this was put really beautifully in a short story collection that I read recently. I've mentioned this before on the channel. Curtis Sittenfeld's show Don't Tell. Great collection of short stories, and the signature, or the title, comes from great short story collection, and the titular story, Show Don't Tell, concludes with this reflection on what it is to be a writer. It's a story about people in an MFA program, and some of them have great success and others of them don't. And at the very end of the story, one of the characters says, yes, you can say whether people have published books, but you don't get to say whether they're writers. Some of them are probably working on books now that they'll eventually finish and sell. Some of them probably haven't written fiction for years and might never again. But the way they inhabit the world, the way they observe it, of course they're writers. And I couldn't agree more. And I talk to people about this a lot in my personal life, where if you are seeing the world in a narrative way, in a way where you're trying to make sense of it with that kind of gloss on it. If you're seeing it as structure, if you're seeing it as theme, if you're seeing it as the hero's journey, all these different narrative tools. But essentially, if you're making a story of your life and the world around you, if you're observing it in that way, then you're a writer. And you might not think of yourself. I've had so many conversations with people recently who are doing other artistic things even, and they're beginning to realize that maybe they're also writers alongside that. And it doesn't mean that you're going to produce 10 novels or 3 short, poetry collections or anything like that. It can just mean that that's how you see the world, and you can bring that understanding and that perspective to whatever it is you're doing. And that can be enough for you to hang your hat on the identity piece as artist or creator or writer. And in terms of then generating the proof in your life, I think a lot of us feel like we have to have the consistent writing practice. Some of the people I admire most are incredibly disciplined, and I'm going to talk about discipline later. Haruki Murakami has written a few books actually about craft and about the way he navigates the world as a writer who has a great deal of longevity. He's written books for decades now. He continues to be popular. He continues to be popular in translation, which is just astounding, really. And he has a lot of discipline, but discipline doesn't have to look the same to everyone. And if you are a parent with young kids, as I am, your life is really not entirely built on your own schedule. It's not even necessarily built on your kids' schedule. It's kind of built on the systems that hold kids' schedule, school and what programs are available and when they're expected to be doing, whatever it is society is kind of putting on their plate. But what that means is you might have to think about discipline regularly. I remember listening to Cheryl Strayed. She did a number of podcast interviews around the time that her books were really blowing up, particularly Wild, which became a Reese Witherspoon. I think she produced it, but she also starred in it, the film. Anyway, her process includes checking into a hotel or a motel. I don't think it's particularly glam, and just pounding out the last bit of her book or polishing it or whatever she needs to do. I think there may have even been occasions where she did the bulk of the writing in this way, because in other times of life, you're crowded out by things that feel difficult to hold. And when it comes to identity and when it comes to taking yourself seriously as an artist, I think it can be easy to be too hard on yourself, and it can be easy to be too soft on yourself. You have to kind of sit in between, because yes, there is, life is busy, and we have so much more coming at us than previous generations, not necessarily even in terms of stress, but certainly in terms of input and volume of information and all of that. It's a lot to navigate and figure out. And so you have to give yourself a little bit of grace, but then at the same time you also have to say, well, if I am going to take this seriously, then I need to be serious about combating that and carving out the space. And it's going to look different depending on, your resources to deal with the hecticness of life. But routine can come in a lot of different ways, and giving yourself the space, the serious space to sit with yourself as artist can look different. But as long as you're doing it and you recognize that part of yourself, I think that you've mastered the first and most important step, which is just really embodying knowing on like a cellular level, as it said, that you are in fact an artist. Okay, so let's talk about discipline. So you're an artist, that you need to make some space to create art, and then you look at your life and you're like, how am I going to do that? And discipline is something that we all struggle with in different arenas. It's challenging for everyone. The human impulse is to just like sit on the couch and eat sweets or crisps or whatever you like, and watch TV. I think there are moments when all of us, that's the that's the preference, but we know in the longer term that only breeds dissatisfaction. Actually, there's a lot of joy in discipline. And that's where I want to start with the discipline piece is joy. I am a firm believer that white knuckling anything just does not work. If you're trying to give something up or you're trying to make a change, you can force it for a little while, but it's not going to stick. And I know for myself, I'm really only interested in lasting lasting change, not quick fixes. I mean, there's a time and a place for maybe like a cleanse for a few days, or it's the season of Lent right now. So, and it's Ramadan, and there are people and who are, within a system that gives them a break from certain things, or you challenge yourself, and you have support from community in doing that. And it's for a set period of time. And that's great. That's its own thing. But discipline as a system, I think, has to come from a joyful place, or it just isn't going to work. I talked before on this channel about the recent interview Sarah J. Maas did on the Call Her Daddy podcast, talking about all of her books to date and the book she has coming out. And her inspiration, the real nucleus of all of her writing, was this just joyful place of absolutely loving fantasy, but also being a little bit frustrated with it because it wasn't reflecting like a feminine experience of real life, like what women's bodies, our desires, our, how we function in the world. And so inserting herself into the type of story she loved, she found she had so much to say. And I'm sure the creative process is challenging for her at times, but having joy as the center point really seems to give her a lot of power, give her a lot of creative power. I mean, she's written dozens of books. She's got more coming out. She's prolific, and I think that comes from the obvious joy she takes in things, and that allows her to just sit in the chair. And this is what Haruki Murakami, I mentioned before, says about the physical discipline you need to be a writer. You actually have to be physically strong to just sit in the chair. And it's not just the sitting and the focus, which is more physical than you might think. It's actually the mental strength you need to go over something again and again. When I was writing my memoir, I thought, I was like, okay, this draft is done. And then I would read it again and I was like, no, I have to change this. I have to change that. You end up going over things so many times. A little bit later, I'll talk about what to look for in reading, because reading is going to help your creative process too. What you get from books that have been really lovingly curated is you're getting text that has been poured over again and again. It takes a lot of mental strength, and even I would say physical strength to put up with that. And the repetitious nature of it is akin to a lot of disciplinary practices like meditation or exercise that might not be fun in the moment. I mean, you can find ways of making them fun for sure, but there is just a lot of grind and repetition there. You might not find joy in the moment of doing that, but if there is a joyful energy underlying that, a real desire for change, then it'll come. In a different arena, there's a popular human design reader, Jenna Zoe, who always talks about making change as, just when you get so sick of your own shit, basically. So that's a different way of putting it. It's, to me, it's kind of like complementary to the joy. It's not, I think you get to a place where you're just excited to make a change because you're just so sick of being in the same loop that you can't be there anymore. And that's a hook for lasting change, in my opinion, rather than, okay, I'm just going to do it because I have to do it. That never lasts, in my opinion. So on the discipline of writing, you have to find ways to show up consistently. H. Somerset Maugham said, I only write when inspiration strikes. Fortunately, inspiration strikes every day at 9 a.m. He just sat in his desk and found the inspiration was there. That's one way of doing it. I've talked about, other kind of less traditional ways of creating discipline for yourself. But the fact of the matter is, once you know that you're an artist and you really have a desire that is kind of won't let go of you, it's sunk its teeth in you to create, you will find the ways to show up. You might need to create some systems. I'm actually okay with like a AI, chat GPT, whatever your thing is, way of tracking progress. I don't think it's a good tool for actual creation. I think that's gonna make you unhappy. That's not how to use these tools. But you can find, whatever system works for you, some way of accountability, of tracking what you're doing, of creating like a joyful metric to look towards. That's gonna help you a lot. And then alongside just the discipline of being able to track in some way how you've shown up, whether for me at the moment it's a word count per week. That's working really well for me. Whatever system it is, alongside that, I really do think that having discipline in other areas of your life is a huge complementary help. So, maybe you want to eat just in a way that allows you to function well. We all know that some food makes us feel bad and some food makes us feel good. And if you're serious about being productive, that means you have to have so much energy that you have energy to expend, to give out. You need vitality to flow. If you're not eating in a way that makes you feel good, it's going to be hard to do that. Similar with physical strength, I'm not advocating any particular way of moving your body, although I love a Stairmaster personally. But you do need to find something because it's getting that energy to flow. That's what art is. It's a movement of energy. It's a movement of life force. It's an expression of the creative energy that you're harnessing or you're generating. I mean, it comes from different places, in my opinion, but it has to be flowing. And so your system has to be working well. You have to be getting enough sleep, whatever that is for you. You have to be feeling good. And if your North Star is clear to you, if you've really got the joyful lasso around it and you're pulling yourself towards it, you're going to find these other things easier all of a sudden because it's going to be all you want to do. And that should fill you with hope because again, it's not a place of struggle. It's actually just allowing things to align and come into place. And then it feels like actually you're being carried up and towards this. As with anything discipline related, the first few weeks, few months are hard, and then it all gets easy. So just hang in there. And if there are things that make these kinds of transitions change easier for you, just hang on to them. So I'm a big fan of flower essences. I think they really help you shift things in your life when you need to do that. But also, you can, like, let's say you think drinking alcohol is not helping you be creative. It's not helping you be the person you want to be in your life. Maybe the first few weeks when you're not drinking alcohol, you have to drink a lot of alcohol-free beer or a lot of Diet Coke or like whatever it is. It's not going to be that way forever. Just give yourself a little grace in the beginning. Let it be messy. And then once you've got a handle on it and you've shown yourself that you can actually do it, then, the training wheels can come off. That's just an approach that has worked for me. Okay, so moving on from discipline, let's talk about tools. And this is where I think people get excited when they think about methodology for being creative and successfully expressive, because we all love to geek out about the right pens and the right notebooks. I have a preference for these German notebooks. I'm trying not to show like too much of the title and stuff. I got a few little stickers in here. It's easy to annotate. We all have the things that we like and we prefer, and there is a time and a place for tools for sure. But what I would say is don't get too hung up on the tools, because a few tweaks can really make a difference, absolutely. But if you're spending a lot of time trying to figure out if you want like a mechanical keyboard or just the standard laptop keyboard, I think you're in the time wasting procrastination space personally. One of the other things I really liked that Sarah JMS said in her interview on Call Her Daddy was that she writes in her bedroom, because we're all told like you shouldn't write in your bedroom. And obviously someone like that who is a huge success, she could have an office to herself. She could have any kind of setup she wants. And she likes to write in her bedroom. And I think there is something, if you have a lot of creative fire, I think of her as someone who is well endowed in the creative fire zone, you actually need containment. And she was talking about how the bedroom feels very cozy and soft to her. And that's where she likes to work. And I really get that. I actually enjoy writing just sitting on my bed too, because I think you can overthink and overstructure. You've got maybe like a candle and some incense and the do not disturb sign on the on the door and everything, and then it's like the pressure's on. That will work for some people, absolutely. And I do love a candle and and the right music. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But actually, I think it really is about simplifying. So much of our problem at the moment, I think, is just over input, over stimulation, over advice. You just need to strip things away and try to make it easy. If you need the training wheels, like with the discipline to begin with, you really want to have the selection of Japanese pencils, like go for it. But I think that you'll find in time that actually it's a lot simpler than you think it is. And really what's required is a stripping away so that the channel is clear and you can just show up and do what needs to be done. And then the tools become like a joyful thing rather than something neurotic that you're kind of grasping onto because you think it's going to make a difference in the creative process. But if you are curious, my current setup, I just use my laptop for writing. I love the program Scrivener. I can talk about that another time if that's of interest to people. There are some things that make the process easier for sure, but really simple is best in my opinion. Okay, now I want to talk about expansion. So you're an artist. You have joyfully attached to the idea that you're joyfully motivated. You're in it. You really want to be creative. You're maybe grinding the gears a little bit because you haven't figured out your systems yet, but you've got your discipline momentum flowing. You're going to figure it out. You're going to carve out even if it's 20 minutes a day, even if you're writing 250 words a day to begin with, you've got it all going. I really think the primary issue to fix in the beginning is containment because we all have energy shooting off everywhere because we're just so distracted and overstimulated. But within containment, you do need to think about expansion. And what I mean by that is the things that kind of enhance that flow of life force I was talking about before and make it easier for you to express and create. So, what kinds of things are expansive? Music is expansive. Other art is expansive. Travel is expansive. These are things that can really influence the direction our art takes, the insights that we receive as we create, and ultimately what we share with the world. So I'll start with something pretty simple. I think music. Some people write in silence. I tend to write in silence, but I am experimenting with bringing in some music. Music absolutely moves the emotions. It does move energy. It's very powerful. So strategic use of music can be fun. Again, I think you maybe try to avoid it becoming something that you neurotically latch onto and over curate, and you have the playlist and the sub playlist and the character playlist and the scene playlist. You can get really distracted with that. But just, music that you enjoy, that makes sense to you, that makes it easier to create, absolutely expansive, very joyful. Something that might seem non-obvious, but I find expansive watching sport. So I do draft sometimes with the TV on with my husband watching rugby, because there's a lot of energy there. You hear the crowd going. You've got people doing amazing things, or like when the Olympics was on, I was watching some of that, and you feel inspired by that. That's what athleticism does. It's inspirational and uplifting and usually a very joyful thing. People getting their teeth knocked out in hockey, perhaps accepted, or maybe that's part of it. I don't know. But there's a lot of energy there, energy to capture. So I actually think sport, either participating in it yourself, but even just, watching it as I do on the couch and then drafting some notes, maybe, some character inspiration in some of the people I'm observing. That's really fun. And that is expansive for sure. And then travel, let's talk about that. So this kind of can coincide with other aspects of the writing process. Like, do you want to write at home? Do you want to write in cafes? What's the role of like an artist's retreat? I think that's very powerful. I think it can be very useful to get outside of your comfort zone, particularly if you feel like you're stuck in a rut. And late winter is definitely like rut zone for me in particular. Spring comes late in the UK. We've got some sunshine today. I'm very grateful for it. It hasn't been like that recently. And it can be easy to feel like it's an uphill battle to get somewhere. That's a good time to shake up the energy, even if it's just changing the routine a little bit. But if you can write somewhere else, go to a cafe or drive to a different town, there's various ways of doing this. And then of course, like the most elaborate is to go on a retreat somewhere else. And I do think that that can work in two ways. One, it can kind of create that containment, the kind of renting out a motel room and just eating delivery pizza and just getting into the zone and pounding things out. But it can also be expansive in terms of exposing you to different perspectives. However spiritually open you are, or even if this is not your orientation, I think all of us know that travel is something that opens your mind. I really find that different lands have very powerful energies to them, different energies everywhere you go. And so you're going to get a different gloss on things, a different perspective. It's going to allow you to understand your own life even differently. I mean, I could go on forever about travel because I do so much of it. And I am someone who expatriated from my home country. So I have a lot to say about that. But in the context of creativity, it's absolutely an aid. It will open it will unstopper the bottle if you're feeling a little bit stuck. And I also think that it enriches, what you're receiving. So travel can absolutely be expansive, but it can also disrupt routine. Too much travel can disrupt routine, and something I struggle with a little bit in the UK. I struggle. I love to travel. It's very fun to get to experience different places, but because of the way the school system works here, it's very different from the US. There are frequent breaks, and that can kind of, I feel like I can just get into a flow, and then school's off for a week and we're trying to figure out what to do with people, and that can be disruptive. So used appropriately, I think travel is a huge help and it definitely opens things up. But just as with everything, like I was saying in the beginning, you can't be too hard on yourself, but you also can't be too soft on yourself. If you're taking this seriously, you have to make some commitments, and you have to make some compromises in your life about stuff just to make sure that you're staying on track. And the satisfaction will grow. It gets easier. It's just like any muscle, any skill you're developing. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. So not running away and saying that you're just getting inspiration, but trying to make sure that everything you're doing is filtering somehow into the creative process. That's going to be helpful to you. And then the other arena of expansion is reading, especially if you're a writer, but I think everyone should be reading. I listened to a podcast recently with I guess I call him like a philosopher, a thought leader, and an author, Cal Newport. He was talking about how we should think about reading pages as we think about steps in a day. So you have a target step number in a day. You should have a target page number per day of pages that you read. And reading a book, he was actually not down on Kindle. He was like, that's fine. It's actually mechanically the way it works. It is almost in terms of how your brain receives it, like turning a page. But reading Substack and articles online is a very different thing. And I think we know that. And listening to things is also different. There's something about sitting down in a quietish space, hopefully, and reading a book that he says has changed our brain. It's actually changed the way the human brain works. So developmentally, it was very important for our evolution, and it's something that we should continue to do. And I could not agree more. But even if you don't want to, that's not necessarily the most inspiring way to think about reading. So maybe you just want to think about it from a joyful place, because again, what's your why? Like, why are you doing this? What medium do you enjoy, and why do you enjoy that? And hopefully it's because you have ready answers, because you're in that medium a fair amount. You're experiencing it. You're enjoying it. So there, I write fiction and I adore fiction. So I read tons of fiction. But there are also books you can read on your craft. And I think that there is a place for that for sure, because if nothing else, it can kind of affirm where you are in your process. I think you can get lost in the weeds too of anything that's too pedantic. I mean, for sure, there are craft books that have real utility. And I would not downplay any of them. I've talked about a few on my channel before, but I'm thinking more about stuff like this Elena Ferrante book, In the Margins, on the pleasures of reading and writing. I really enjoyed this. It's super short, as you can see, but it's just a good reminder of like why we read, why we write. And she's obviously a fantastic author and, has some interesting things to say. Stephen King has good things to say on writing. I think many of us know that. There's Anne Lamott, Bird by Bird. I loved that book. And then, of course, there's like The Master for Any Artist. Bear with me a minute while I grab it. Any and every artist will enjoy Rick Rubin's very mystical looking The Creative Act. It's great. It's great. And you can read it. I did this as like a morning pages practice almost. I just would read like 5 pages a day in the morning. There are very short sections. You can read it in that way very easily and feel inspired for your day. And it's not like you're going to take copious notes of very specific things you need to do. It's just a reminder of how the process feels, why you're doing it, how to relate to your audience. I think that's key too. It can be fun to listen to people you like do interviews too. I thought it was interesting that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck went on Joe Rogan recently-ish to talk about their Netflix movie. And Ben Affleck was talking about how he personally is shy, but like the artist never wants to play to an empty stage, right? So you are trying to appeal to the greater audience, even if that's at odds with like your personality type. I thought that was really interesting. So, engage with art and artists. Find people who are doing things that you want to do and listen to what they have to say, not because you intend to copy them, but just because not everyone is brave enough or has the capacity to put their creative endeavors, at the forefront of their life. It's challenging, and it's good to connect with people who are doing that or have something to say about it. It will give you courage. It will help you. So I absolutely recommend it. And, make sure again that this is coming from a joyful place, because ultimately that's what will like fan the flames within yourself and make it easier. So those are my thoughts on how to, I guess, find a methodology that works for you, but really how to create on a consistent basis. Hopefully that was helpful. I have found it helpful in my own life to navigate through this. And what I will say is, underneath what's been going on for me anyway, underneath figuring out all of these different points and different ways of looking at creativity is like huge psychological shifts, because as you are, as I said in the beginning, experiencing the world as a writer, looking at it through maybe a narrative construct or through a storytelling lens, you are learning more, of course, about your own life and your own experience. And as your identity shifts into the identity of a creative, other parts of your identity have to kind of dance around that and shift around too. So a lot is unearthed. It can be very confronting. It can be very confronting with other people as well, who will absolutely feel the waves coming off of you of the process that you're going through. But stick with it, because it's only, I think it only produces satisfaction ultimately, to be able to bring into being your creative impulses and sparks and your observations. It's very powerful. So I commend you on your way. Thank you for joining me. You can find out more about all the things I'm up to in the link in my bio, and I will catch you next time. Okay, and I'm just gonna have a go at re-recording the beginning, because I wasn't super happy with that. So I think sometimes I get going better as I come along. So hello and welcome back. This is an episode for creative people. If you are interested, hello and welcome back. This is an episode for creative people. If you are looking for a way to harness your creative desires, your creative ambitions, the downloads you're receiving, and translate them into expression consistently and in a satisfying way. This episode is for you. I'm going to talk about becoming an artist, creating art, how to do this in a sustainable, fun, productive way, all the things you need to think about. I hope that you find it useful. So let's get going.